So you want to know what focal length is best for portraits? Well, we're going to look at a few different focal length lenses today with Marissa here for PPA. I'm Daniel Norton. Let's get to it. Years ago, when zoom lenses weren't what they are today, well, I'll say it like that, I worked for this photographer, big advertising photographer, and he always had a couple of zooms in his bag. He never shot with these lenses. What he would do is he would frame up his shot with them, look at the zoom, and then put a prime on. Now, this isn't a video about why primes or zooms are better or worse or whatever, but he didn't care what lens he was using. He cared where he stood and how it looked. And that's how we have to think about portraits. All the people that tell you this is the exact lens that you should use for this is the exact lens you should use for that, sure, that's a good place to start. But in reality, what we want to do is choose our focal length based on where we stand. Where you're standing relative to your subject is the most important thing. So we're going to walk through several different focal lengths. I'm going to use a zoom lens, and I'm going to show you that if I stand in the same spot and I change the focal length of my lens, the image, the way the model is drawn onto the digital sensor will be the same, because that's what matters. The focal length is only going to really determine our crop. So let's get to it. For this, I'm just going to use a really soft open light so we don't have to worry too much about it, just using a big silk over here with the light shooting through it. I'm going to start off with the one that you're going to get the answer. If you go online and you ask AI, what is the best lens for portraits? You know what you're going to get. You're yelling at the screen, 85 millimeter. Let's take a look. So when I'm making a portrait, there's a couple things I want to keep in mind. Obviously, how much coverage we're going to have, which we'll talk about in a second. But the most important thing for me is that a portrait is a conversation. You're not always going to have a professional actress here. Well, I mean, I am, but you're not always going to have a professional actress here. So you've got to have a conversation with your subject. If you are standing in the other room with your 200 millimeter lens, screaming at this person that's already uncomfortable in front of the camera, it's going to be difficult for them to be comfortable. So I tend to stand a normal conversational distance, not a I'm at the club, but a normal conversational distance from my subject to get my baseline. So if I walked up to Marissa normally and we started talking, this is about as far away as I would stand, maybe even a little closer, but this is a good distance. So with an 85 millimeter lens, this gives me roughly a head and shoulder shot. Not the shampoo. There you go. So the best lens for portraits, no, seriously though, this gives us that standard head and shoulder portrait, exactly what you would expect. But does that mean it's the best lens for portraits? What if I want a full length portrait? If I keep the 85 on, I'm like off the screen together. I can't even get her whole body from here. I'm too far away. That's not what I want. So let's say I want a 3/4. I'm going to stand at the same distance, but I'm going to change my focal length. Let's say 50. 50 is a normal lens. They say it is anyways. And one thing we want to keep in mind is that we don't generally want to be tilting our camera up or down. A lot of times when people are making portraits, I see them just keep the camera at eye level, and no matter who they're photographing, they're like, keep the camera level. That's going to make a big difference in not getting any distortion, especially if you're going to go with wider lenses. So I have a 50. And because I can use the screen on the back, I can just lower my camera like this, like I'm shooting with a Rolleiflex or something, and make a shot. Now I've got same kind of shot, same distance. Her facial structure remains the same. I mean, I'm slightly lower, obviously. But we can see there's no distortion. Her face doesn't look wider or more narrow or anything, because that's mostly caused by the distance you are from the subject. If I get real close to you, it's going to change the way my face looks. So if we want more of her in the shot, again, we can go wider. I can go 35. Just keeping the same distance. Now at this point, this is probably not how I would shoot a portrait. I would get a tripod out. I'd have an Apple box. I'd work like that. So again, I'm just showing this so that we can see. Also, don't have Marissa put her chin up. That we don't want to do that. But yeah, let's have you look straight ahead. Because remember, if you lower a camera on somebody, we don't want them to be looking up, because then we're looking up their nose. But we can see that again, even with the 35 millimeter, the face is roughly, if not exactly, the same proportions. We're not really seeing any manipulation in the face. So all this talk about lenses making the face look different or whatever, that really comes down to where you're standing. If I take my wide angle lens, my 35, and I get in close like that 85, now we're getting distortion, right? And a funny face, right? If I go with a longer lens and I keep the same distance I had with the 85, I'm just doing a tighter shot. It doesn't actually make it any different. So this is why zoom lenses these days, even though I started off by saying that this photographer I worked for never used the zooms to take pictures, this is why they can be your main kit lens for portraits. It's great. You get your subject in front of you. It's nice and simple. I have all those focal lengths to choose from. I'm not worrying about shooting at 1.2. I like to see my entire subject in focus, right? So because I don't need super fast lenses, a nice zoom lens might be the best lens for portraits for you. I know it is for me. All right, so in the end, the focal length that you choose is really going to depend on what you want in the shot and how far away you are from your subject. That's the distance I like to stand. You might like to stand further away or closer. That's up to you. Figure that out based on your style and then choose the appropriate lens. But also, there's other things to consider. I always joke about the shallow depth of field, but the thing is, maybe you want to really shallow depth of field. Maybe you want a lens that's sharp in different ways, that defocuses the background differently. These are reasons to choose portrait lenses over others, right? You may choose a macro lens for a portrait because you might want to come in for some really close shots at a certain point and you don't want to change lenses. You may not choose a macro lens because maybe you think they're too sharp. All of these things factor into why you choose a lens, not just the focal length. The focal length is really the baseline of how you're cropping your image. If you have any other questions about focal lengths or you have a particular one that you like to use, let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to this PPA channel. You're going to get all kinds of videos from different photographers, different points of view. That's why we're here. And be sure to check the description for a link to Marissa and to me. And I'll talk to you soon.